Hello everyone, today I'm going to explain the events that surround Manifest Destiny. The era in which the United States sought out to expand its territory across the continent in a self-proclaimed destiny given by God. This occurred for most of the 19th century and it showcased early America's diplomacy skills with other nations. While the US has gained land through winning the American Revolution and all that, it didn't decide to start seeking land until... Here's how the Louisiana Purchase happened. French conqueror Napoleon was trying to find a way to fund his troops in the midst of the conquest of Europe. Ultimately, he decided to sell the last huge piece of North American land that France owned to the United States for about $15 million. With members in government also in agreement, the agreement was signed off in 1803, leading to President Thomas Jefferson to send Lewis and Clark on an expedition to explore the West. This would bring the arrival of brand new states, a ton of economic opportunities in the form of factories, and absolutely no conflict until the Civil War. After the British finally decided to leave the United States alone for once, that's when the feelings of Manifest Destiny truly started to grow. For example, Secretary of State John Quincy Adams convinced Spain to cede its territory of Florida in 1819 in the Adams-Otis Treaty. And the Missouri Compromise allowed for states to finally become annexed while tying an albeit loose bow on the issue of slave versus free states. The 1820s was the decade in which the market revolution took place. Meanwhile, in Texas, once Mexico gained independence from Spain, it immediately began looking for settlers to inhabit its own state of Texas. So it encouraged Americans to settle there. Unfortunately, this all backfired on them when they gained a new constitution, since trying to dissolve state legislation has never sat well with Americans, even during the colonial age. So in 1836, the Texans rebelled, started the Mexican-Texan War, and eventually, with the help of the US, and gained their independence. We'll come back to Texas later. In the meanwhile, in the 1820s, living in Georgia and the Cherokee Native Americans were having some friction with each other. I think the pictures will show this whole thing better. Meanwhile, in Texas, in 1845, President Polk, we'll get to him later, sought to annex Texas and purchase the other northern territories that Mexico owned. After failing to do so with diplomacy, Polk sent troops to disputed lands in hopes of starting a war. That worked. Thus, the Mexican-American War started in 1846. Overall, everybody involved was okay with the conditions set by the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Except Mexico, it got the short end of the stick. At least the California gold rush of 1849 happened? You know what, let's just move on. In 1818, Great Britain and the United States signed a treaty in which they would have a joint occupation of the Oregon country to define the borders of the Louisiana Purchase. Over the course of 20 years, American farmers have flocked to the Oregon Territory to gain some fertile land for themselves. And both them and President Polk wanted it to be a part of U.S. territory. So in 1846, President Polk and some American diplomats met with some British diplomats to settle on an agreement to where the territory was divided at the 49th parallel, in which the southern proportion became the US's. Overall, the era of Manifest Destiny has resulted in a bunch of good and bad consequences. While it expanded the size of the US, made the economy more varied, brought along a ton of new technology, and had a part in multiplying the issue of slavery to the public, the interactions that the United States had with other nations and Native Americans made it worse. However, without it, the United States would be a completely different nation today.